A poor girl bursts into the emergency room of a hospital and grabs a doctor's white coat weeping. "Please, don't let my mum die." A young millionaire CEO witnesses the scene and collapses upon discovering who is in the operating room. The glass doors of Central Hospital slid open with an icy gust. Rain poured relentlessly outside, but inside the building the air smelled of disinfectant and weak coffee. Doctors and nurses hurried past in the corridors, while patients waited quietly in the reception area. Ethan Parker straightened his grey suit, irritated to be there. Hospitals were not his favorite place. He preferred the view from the top floor of his skyscraper, where he managed his financial empire with the precision of a maestro. But there he was, wasting precious time because of a simple formality. He ignored the receptionist calling him and kept walking, checking messages on his phone. A missed call from his assistant, 3 urgent emails. The stock market numbers were going up. His empire grew by the minute, even while he was stuck in that place in which smelled of sickness and worry. "Mr. Parker," the receptionist tried again, "Dr. Matthews will see you shortly." Ethan waved a quick hand, not looking at her. He only needed to pick up some signed papers from the chief physician. His company was donating equipment to the hospital, not out of kindness, but for public image and tax deductions. That was all that mattered in the end. Numbers, profits, advantages. The sound of the emergency room doors caught his attention. Not the main doors, but the interior ones, the ones that separated the waiting area from the treatment areas. People walked in and out in a rush, carrying clipboards and pushing gurneys. Nothing special. Until a small pink whirlwind burst through. A little girl with curly brown hair, wearing a pink coat soaked by the rain, ran into the emergency area. Her large and expressive eyes were red and swollen. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Tears rolled down her small face as she ran, slipping slightly on the shiny floor. She clung tightly to the white coat of a tall doctor who tried in vain to lead her back to the waiting room. "Please," her childish voice filled the entire reception area. "Please save my mommy." Ethan Parker stopped typing on his phone. Something in that voice froze him in place. It wasn't just the child's desperation, it was something deeper, as if that little voice had found a hidden point within him, a place he hadn't visited in years. "My mommy won't wake up," the girl went on, sobbing so hard her small body shook. "She fell and won't wake up. There's blood, lots of blood." "Please, you're a doctor. You make people better." The doctor knelt in front of her, speaking softly. Ethan couldn't hear what he was saying, but he could see the kindness in the way he held the girl's hands in his own, trying to calm her down. "You promised. You said you would take care of her." The girl shook the doctor's coat, as if that alone could make him run faster to save her mother. A nurse approached and tried to take the girl by the hand. "Lily, sweetie, let's let the doctors work. Come with me. We'll have some hot chocolate while you wait." "No." The girl, Lily, pulled away, backing away from the nurse. "I want to stay with my mommy. She needs me." The gold watch on Ethan's wrist kept marking the passing time. He had an important meeting in less than an hour. His driver was waiting outside. His life, his business, his world kept turning. But he couldn't take his eyes off that child, off that raw and sincere desperation. He wasn't the type to be easily moved. You don't reach the top of the financial world by feeling sorry for people. Ethan Parker was known not for compassion, but for calculated coldness and ruthless decisions. So why did that child's crying affect him so deeply? "I promise," the doctor said calmly, "we're doing everything to help your mother. But you have to let us work, understand? The faster we do our job, the sooner your mum will get better." Lily wiped her tears with the sleeve of her coat, leaving dark stains on the pink fabric. She still clung to the doctor's coat, as though it was her only connection to her mother. "Is she going to be okay?" she asked in a small voice, as small as she was. The doctor hesitated for a moment, long enough for Ethan to realize how serious the situation was. He recognized that hesitation. It was the same he had whenever he had to tell an employee they were fired, or an investor they had lost everything. "We're doing our best," the doctor finally replied. The words hung in the air like an unspoken sentence. Ethan felt a knot in his stomach. That response would never satisfy a desperate child, but it was the most honest possible. Lily let go of the doctor's coat, and he was immediately called back into the emergency area. Something was happening inside, something urgent. Two nurses ran in the same direction. Ethan heard a code being announced on the hospital's PA system. The nurse tried again to take Lily's hand, but she dodged, leaning against the white hospital wall and sliding down until she was sitting on the floor. Her little feet, in Velcro sneakers, didn't reach the floor when she sat in the chairs. "Mommy's going to be okay," she whispered to herself, rocking back and forth. "Mommy always gets better. She promised never to leave me." Ethan frowned. Something was off about this scene. For the first time, he noticed what he should have from the start. The girl was alone. Completely alone. He looked around, searching for some worried adult, someone who might rush over to help that child. But the waiting room was full of people absorbed in their own problems, their own pain. He approached the receptionist, who was typing furiously on her computer. "That girl," he said quietly, nodding toward her. "She's all by herself." The receptionist glanced at Lily and sighed. Her eyes showed a mix of pity and concern. "Seems so." She arrived in the ambulance with her mother. A neighbor called for help when she heard the sound of the fall, but couldn't come along. "We're trying to locate a relative, but so far no luck." "And the mother?" Ethan asked, surprised at himself for being so interested. "Critical condition," the receptionist said softly. "She went straight into surgery, a domestic accident, fell down the stairs, hit her head. A brain hemorrhage, from what I heard." She glanced at Lily and added, "The girl saw everything. She was the one who opened the door for the paramedics." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. A 5-year-old child seeing her mother collapsed, bleeding, possibly dying. A child alone while the only person she had in the world was fighting for her life. Something about this situation bothered him more than it should. People went through crises every day. He himself had caused crises in many people's lives. He fired employees without a second thought, shut down entire companies if it meant more profit. It was part of the business game. But there was a child so small and frightened. "What's the mother's name?" he asked, still watching Lily. The receptionist quickly looked at the computer screen. Hannah Whitmore." Ethan's world stopped for a moment. The air felt heavier in his lungs, as if someone had increased the gravity in the waiting room. His hands went cold despite the hospital's heating. Hannah Whitmore. That name brought back memories he had buried years ago. Hannah Whitmore, the young department manager he had humiliated and then fired in a board meeting. She had dared to question one of his decisions, presenting numbers that contradicted his projections. Ethan remembered his face heating with anger, how he had pointed a finger at her and yelled in front of all the executives. "Who do you think you are to question my decisions? Pack your things. You're fired." Hannah had begged for her job, explaining she was a single mother who needed the work. She had bills to pay, responsibilities. Ethan had ignored her pleas and ordered security to escort her off the premises. He never forgot the tears in her eyes as she was dragged out, or the disapproving looks from the other employees. But it hadn't bothered him for long. He believed he did what was necessary to maintain his authority. "You don't run an empire by showing weakness." "Do you know her?" the receptionist asked, noticing his change of expression. Ethan didn't answer. His eyes returned to the little girl curled against the wall, Lily, Hannah's daughter, the child who had probably gone hungry when her mother was unemployed for months, the child whose life he had disrupted without even knowing she existed. He had moved on, building his fortune, while Hannah struggled to raise her daughter alone. And now here she was, fighting again, this time for her life. A weight settled in his chest. It wasn't just guilt. It was a mix of shame and regret he rarely felt. Men like him didn't look back, didn't get stuck on past mistakes. Success was built by moving forward, stepping on whoever you had to. But the consequence of his actions was right there, in the form of a frightened child. The result of his decisions, a child whose world could end that day. Lily raised her tear-stained face, and for a moment, their eyes met. Brown eyes, identical to her mother's, the same determined look Hannah had when she faced Ethan in that boardroom, before her courage turned to despair. Ethan looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. He felt exposed. as if the girl could see right through him, see the terrible person he was. Absurd, of course. She didn't even know him. She'd probably never heard of him. "Dr. Matthews is ready for you, Mr. Parker," the receptionist informed. Ethan nodded mechanically. His business at the hospital suddenly seemed so small, so insignificant. As he walked toward the elevator, something inside him, perhaps his long-dormant conscience, began to awaken, as if a door he had locked and thrown away the key to was opening on its own. He looked back one last time. Lily had pulled her knees up to her chest and rested her head on them. Her small shoulders trembled. Alone, completely alone. With no one to tell her everything would be all right, even if it was a lie. The elevator arrived, and the doors opened with a soft chime. Ethan hesitated, his finger hovering over the button for the floor where Dr. Matthews was waiting. His driver was outside, his important meeting in less than an hour. His perfect, organized life. And for the first time he could remember, Ethan Parker felt like ignoring all of it, felt like fixing something he himself had broken. Ethan spent the next hour in a bureaucratic meeting with Dr. Matthews, but his mind couldn't focus on the documents in front of him. The image of Lily alone in the waiting room haunted him like a persistent ghost. His eyes skimmed lines of contractual text without absorbing a single word. The sound of that child's voice echoed in his ears, overpowering the doctor's technical explanations. "Mr. Parker, are you listening?" asked Dr. Matthews, frowning. "Yes, of course," Ethan replied automatically, snapping back to the present. "Please, continue." But soon his thoughts drifted again. Hannah Whitmore, the woman he had publicly humiliated years ago. The woman whose tearful face he had ignored when she tried to explain she was the sole support of her family. The woman now fighting for her life somewhere in that same hospital. He signed the donation paperwork mechanically, answering the doctor's questions with monosyllables. The $10 million his company was donating to the new trauma center now seemed like a negligible amount. Money he wouldn't even miss. An empty gesture of charity for tax deductions and positive headlines. "I'm sure this partnership will be beneficial for both parties, Doctor," Matthews said, shaking his hand. "Central Hospital appreciates the generosity of Parker Enterprises." Ethan nodded, suddenly uncomfortable with the gratitude. It was easy to donate money. The hard part was looking someone you had wronged in the eye. When he finally said goodbye, instead of heading to the hospital exit where his driver had been waiting over an hour, Ethan found himself walking back toward the emergency waiting area. His phone vibrated in his pocket, likely his assistant reminding him of the board meeting that would start in less than 30 minutes. For the first time in his career, Ethan ignored the call. The reception was busier now. The afternoon shift had started, and new patients were arriving. Families came and went, some with relieved faces, others devastated by the news they had received. He searched for the pink coat and the curly hair, turning his head in all directions. For a moment, he thought Lily might have been taken by a relative, perhaps her father or a grandmother. That would have been best. After all, what could he do for her? He knew nothing about children. He had never been interested in them, had never thought about having kids. His empire was his only family and his shareholders, his only dependents. Then he spotted the little pink coat. Lily was sitting in a far corner of the waiting room, alone in a chair too big for her. Her legs swung in the air, not reaching the floor. She was hugging a brown bag that seemed to belong to an adult, likely Hannah's. The zipper was partially open, revealing some papers and a worn-out wallet. No one was watching her. No one offered comfort or a glass of water. It was as if the world had completely forgotten that a 5-year-old child shouldn't be alone in a hospital while her mother fought for her life. Ethan felt something strange in his chest. Discomfort, pity, guilt, probably all three, forming a knot that made it hard to breathe. He hesitated briefly, thinking about simply leaving. His driver was still outside. So many appointments, so many millions to manage, so many important decisions only he could make. But his feet carried him in the opposite direction, toward the little girl. "Hi," he said, stopping a few steps away so as not to scare her. Lily lifted her red eyes. She had been crying again. Up close, the resemblance to Hannah was even more striking. The same large, expressive eyes, the same facial shape, even a small dimple in her chin. She clutched the bag to her chest, wary. "Are you a doctor?" she asked in a tiny voice. "No," Ethan answered, feeling oddly nervous. He, who dominated entire conference rooms of powerful executives with a single look, felt uncomfortable in front of a 5-year-old. "I just noticed you're here by yourself." Lily lowered her head, focusing on her colorful sneakers with blinking lights each time she swung her feet. "Mommy is sleeping. The doctors said they're going to wake her up." The simplicity of that childish explanation made Ethan's heart tighten. He realized he was in unfamiliar territory. How do you talk to a child about something so serious? What do you say when there's no guarantee of a happy ending? "May I sit down?" he asked, pointing to the chair beside her. Lily shrugged, still not looking at him. It was such an adult gesture for someone so small. Ethan sat, keeping a respectful distance. For a moment, they remained silent. The hospital noise flowed around them, ringing phones, people talking, gurneys being pushed through the corridor, announcements over the PA system calling doctors to different wards. "Have you eaten anything?" he asked finally, realizing it was almost lunchtime. The clock on the wall read just after noon. Lily shook her head. "I'm saving my money," she said, opening her mother's bag a bit more and showing a few coins at the bottom. "In case Mommy needs to buy medicine. Medicine is expensive." Ethan felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. A 5-year-old worried about money for medicine. What had Hannah gone through so that her young daughter already understood the value of money? So that a child who should be concerned only with cartoons and toys knew the weight of financial burdens? "What if I buy you something to eat?" he offered, trying to keep his voice casual so she wouldn't see how shaken he was. "You don't have to spend your money." Lily frowned, giving him a serious look that didn't match her age. Her eyes flicked over Ethan's expensive suit, his costly shoes, his gold watch. "Mommy says I shouldn't accept things from strangers." "Your mom is right," Ethan replied, respecting her caution. "She seems very smart. My name is Ethan, and yours is Lily, right? I heard the nurse call you that earlier." She nodded, still cautious. "So we're not strangers anymore," he tried, offering a small smile. "And I promise I only want to help. It must be hard waiting here alone." Lily's eyes filled with tears again. She sniffled, trying to be strong, but the burden was too great for such small shoulders. "I called Grandma Martha, but she lives really far away in another state. She has problems with her legs and can't drive. She's going to take a plane, but it will take a while." Ethan pictured an elderly woman, likely Hannah's mother, desperately trying to get to her granddaughter, alone just like Lily was alone now. "Your dad? He can't come?" Ethan asked, already guessing the answer. "I don't have a dad," Lily said simply, as if stating the sky is blue. "Well, everyone has a dad. Mommy explained how babies are made, but mine left when I was still in her belly. He didn't want a family." The child's frankness was devastating. Ethan remembered Hannah's employee file at his company. She had never mentioned being pregnant. Probably she feared it would hurt her chances of advancing. Rightly so. Companies like his, despite the diversity policies they showcased in annual reports, rarely promoted women with small children to high responsibility roles. "So your mom takes care of you alone?" "Yes." For the first time, Lily showed some enthusiasm. Her sad face lit up with genuine pride. "Mommy is super strong. She works in 2 places, you know? By day, she's a secretary at a law firm, and at night, she cleans apartments in a fancy building. On weekends, we stay together. She always says I'm her treasure." Ethan swallowed hard. Hannah working 2 jobs to support her daughter, and he knew exactly why. After he fired her, she had probably struggled to find another job in finance. No one wanted to hire someone who had been booted from one of the largest companies in the country, especially when that person had challenged the powerful Ethan Parker, a daytime secretary and a nighttime cleaner. While he slept on silk sheets in his penthouse, Hannah scrubbed floors and cleaned bathrooms, likely exhausted, to ensure her daughter had the basics. "Mommy saves a lot," Lily went on, as though she needed to prove her mother's competence. "When I want a toy, she says we need to save money for important things, like rent and food. And my school. Every word cut Ethan's conscience like a sharp blade. The mansion where he lived had 10 empty bedrooms. His wristwatch cost more than Hannah probably earned in an entire year. Sometimes, when it's really cold, we sleep in the same bed to save on heating, Lily said, as if sharing a fun secret. Mommy says we're like hibernating squirrels. She holds me and tells me stories until I fall asleep. Her stories are better than the ones in books. Ethan remained silent, absorbing the impact of Lily's simple words. While he lived a life of needless luxury, Hannah struggled to maintain the bare minimum for her daughter, saving on heat, counting coins to buy medicine. At Christmas, Lily continued, now more comfortable talking, I asked for a big doll, the kind that talks, but it was too expensive, so Mommy sewed a doll for me out of fabric scraps. She has button eyes and yarn hair. She's the best doll in the world. Her name is Clara. Hannah, who had worked at his company as a financial analyst, a brilliant woman with an MBA and a promising future, reduced to sewing patchwork dolls because she couldn't afford to buy her daughter a store-bought toy for Christmas. Are you hungry? He asked again, wanting to change the subject before the guilt completely consumed him. Lily hesitated, looking at the bag with the coins. A little, she finally admitted, as if confessing a weakness. Let's go to the cafeteria, then, Ethan suggested, standing up. What do you like to eat? A cheese sandwich, she answered promptly. Then she added timidly, but only if it's not too expensive. Mommy says everything costs more in the hospital cafeteria than at the store. Don't worry about that, Ethan said, offering his hand. Today, it's on me. Lily looked at his outstretched hand, still hesitant. What if the doctors come to talk about Mommy, and I'm not here? I need to know when she wakes up. We can ask the receptionist to let us know, Ethan replied, nodding toward the desk where a middle-aged woman was typing on a computer. We'll tell her where we'll be. That way, if there's any news about your mom, she'll call us immediately. Lily considered the suggestion, her small face serious as though weighing an important decision. After a moment of reflection, she carefully put the coins back in her mother's bag, zipped it closed, and then, to Ethan's surprise, took his hand. Her little hand was warm and light as a feather. Ethan felt a strange wave of protectiveness as he held those tiny fingers. It was the first time in years that anyone had trusted him so simply, not for his money or power, but just because they needed help. They told the receptionist where they would be and headed to the cafeteria. Ethan could feel curious glances from some people. A man in an expensive suit holding the hand of a child in a pink coat. They probably thought he was her father. The hospital cafeteria was simple but clean, metal tables with colorful plastic chairs, a counter offering sandwiches, salads, and drinks. Nothing like the upscale restaurants Ethan frequented. Pick whatever you want, he told Lily. She ordered her cheese sandwich and a cup of chocolate milk. Ethan ordered a black coffee. They sat at a table by a window overlooking the hospital parking lot. Lily devoured her sandwich as if she hadn't eaten in days. Maybe that was true. Who knew how many meals she had missed since her mother was hospitalized? Ethan watched her, noticing how her eyes, though sad and still had the spark of innocence only children possess. Mommy will be sad if she dies, Lily suddenly said, playing with the crumbs on her plate. She always says she wants to see me grow up and be as smart as she is. Ethan froze. The abrupt shift to such a heavy topic caught him off guard. Children had that power, brutal honesty that adults lost over time. Your mum is a strong person, he said, choosing his words carefully. The doctors are doing everything they can to help her. But what if she goes to heaven? Lily asked, her big eyes fixed on Ethan. Who's going to take care of me? Grandma Martha is really old and lives far away. She has arthritis. The question hung in the air like an unbearable weight. Ethan had no answer. The fear in Lily's eyes was real and justified. If Hannah didn't survive, what would happen to this child? A foster care system already overwhelmed. An elderly grandmother who could barely move. I'm scared of being alone, Lily confessed, her voice almost a whisper. At my school, there's a girl who went to an orphanage after her mom died. She said it's really sad there. The older kids hit the younger ones and steal their toys. Ethan felt his heart tighten. He was partly responsible for this situation. If he hadn't fired Hannah, maybe she wouldn't have needed 2 jobs. Maybe she wouldn't have been so tired she fell down the stairs. Maybe she would have had better health insurance that guaranteed proper treatment. Last month, Lily went on, our refrigerator broke. Mommy cried at night when she thought I was asleep. She had to use all our savings to buy a used fridge. Now we don't have any money saved for emergencies. Mommy said it'll be hard to pay the hospital. Every word was a silent accusation. Ethan recalled the multi-million-dollar bonuses he handed out to his executives, the yacht he'd bought last year and used only twice, the collection of sports cars in his garage. Lily, he said, leaning forward, you don't have to worry about money right now, and you won't be alone. The words came out of his mouth before he could think about what he was promising, but when he saw Lily's hopeful face turn toward him, he knew he wouldn't take it back. Promise, she asked with the seriousness only a child has when asking something so important. I promise, Ethan replied, and for the first time in many years, he made a promise he genuinely intended to keep. Lily looked at him for a long moment, as if assessing the sincerity of his words. Then slowly, a small smile appeared on her face. It wasn't a fully happy smile. There was still so much fear and worry in her eyes, but it was a hopeful one. Thank you, she said, and that simple gratitude weighed more than all the accolades Ethan had ever received in his life. He glanced at his watch. The board meeting had already started 20 minutes ago. His phone was buzzing incessantly in his pocket. The world outside kept turning, demanding his attention, time, and decisions. But for the first time, Ethan Parker was exactly where he needed to be. The shrill sound of an alarm echoed through the hospital corridors. Doctors and nurses hurried, while the people in the waiting room froze, looking toward the commotion. Lily, who had been coloring a book Ethan bought at the hospital gift shop, looked up, startled. What's that? She asked, eyes wide. Ethan tried to keep his expression calm, despite the tightness in his chest. It's just a hospital alarm. Don't worry. But he knew it was more than that. Over the last few hours, he'd learned to recognize different hospital sounds and codes. That specific alarm, accompanied by the metallic voice announcing a code blue, meant an emergency. Someone was in cardiac arrest. Time seemed to stretch as they waited. Lily went back to coloring, though with less enthusiasm. Ethan kept checking his watch, counting the minutes. It had been nearly 5 hours since they arrived, and they still had no concrete news about Hannah, just vague updates that she was in surgery. 15 minutes later, a tired-looking doctor appeared at the waiting room door. His eyes scanned the area until he spotted Ethan and Lily. Family of Hannah Whitmore. Lily jumped up from her seat and ran to the doctor before Ethan could stop her. Did my mummy wake up? She asked, clutching his white coat. The doctor, Dr. Reynolds, according to his badge, looked from Lily to Ethan, who now stood beside her. There was a silent question in his eyes. I'm a family friend, Ethan quickly explained. I've been looking after Lily while her grandmother travels here. Dr. Reynolds nodded, appearing satisfied with the explanation. May we speak for a moment? He asked Ethan, indicating a more secluded corner. Then, kneeling to Lily's level, he spoke gently. Honey, how about you wait in the chair while I talk to your friend? I promise it'll be quick. Lily looked at them both warily. It's about Mommy. I want to know about Mommy. Yes, it's about your mother, the doctor answered patiently. But first, I need to talk about some complicated adult things with your friend. Then we'll talk to you, okay? Reluctantly, Lily went back to her seat, but she kept her eyes fixed on them. Doctor. Reynolds led Ethan to a more isolated corner of the room where they could speak without being overheard. Mr. Parker. Ethan Parker. Mr. Parker. Ms. Whitmore's condition is quite delicate, the doctor began, his voice low and serious. We managed to control the cerebral hemorrhage and reduce intracranial pressure, but she had a complication during surgery, a cardiac arrest. Ethan felt his stomach sink. Is she? We managed to revive her, Dr. Reynolds continued, but she's not breathing on her own. We had to intubate her and transfer her to the ICU. Her condition is critical but stable for now. Ethan looked over at Lily, who was still watching them closely. How could he explain this to a 5-year-old? How could he tell her that her mother was clinging to life, connected to machines? What are her chances of recovering? He asked, feeling his throat tighten. "It's too early to say," the doctor answered honestly. "The next 48 hours will be crucial. If she gets through that without further complications, her chances improve significantly. But I must be honest, there's a risk of permanent neurological damage because of the time her brain went without adequate oxygen." The doctor paused as if weighing what to say next. "There's also the matter of costs," he finally said, looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Whitmore doesn't have insurance. The emergency surgery is covered by basic public assistance, but prolonged intensive care, specialized medications, and monitoring tests." He let the sentence trail off, the meaning clear enough. Ethan felt a wave of anger surge through him. Was this what the system had become? People had to worry about money while fighting for their lives. "Don't worry about the costs," he said firmly. "I'll pay for everything. The best treatment, the best specialists, whatever it takes." Dr. Reynolds studied him for a moment, trying to see if the offer was sincere. "We're talking about significant expenses, Mr. Parker. Money is not an issue. I want her to receive everything she needs." As he said those words, a memory flashed in Ethan's mind. Hannah standing before him in that boardroom years ago. "Please, Mr. Parker," she had pleaded. "I need this job. I have responsibilities, bills to pay." And he, without hesitation, had replied, "You should have thought of that before challenging me in front of the entire board. Security, escort Ms. Whitmore out. Her belongings will be mailed to her." The shame he felt now was almost physical. How could he have been so cruel? How could he have treated another human being that way? "Mr. Parker," Dr. Reynolds' voice brought him back to the present. "I'll need some information to formalize this arrangement." "Of course," Ethan said, still shaken by the memory. "My assistant will handle the paperwork. Just tell me what needs to be done." After exchanging contacts with the doctor, Ethan returned to where Lily waited anxiously. "What about Mommy?" she asked immediately. Ethan sat down next to her, thinking carefully about how to explain the situation without scaring her more than necessary. "Your mum is resting in a special part of the hospital called the ICU," he began. "That's where the doctors can take the best care of her." "She's still sleeping?" Lily asked, her worry evident. "Yes, she's in a deep sleep. The doctors are helping her breathe with special machines while her body heals. Can I see her?" The question was inevitable. Ethan hesitated. "ICU rules are different. Usually kids aren't allowed in, but I'll talk to the doctors, see what we can do." Lily lowered her head, disappointed, but didn't push it. Even at her age, she seemed to grasp how serious this was. "When will she wake up?" "We don't know yet," Ethan answered honestly. "It may take some time, but the doctors are doing everything they can to help her." In the silence that followed, Ethan pulled out his phone and started making calls. First to his assistant, giving clear instructions about paying for Hannah's treatment and cancelling all his commitments for the next few days. Then to his lawyer, asking him to prepare any documents necessary to ensure Hannah got the best medical care possible, no matter the cost. As he spoke on the phone, he watched Lily carefully color her book with bright hues for a starry sky. There was something in her concentration, in the way she gripped the crayon with determination, that reminded him so much of Hannah. That same persistence, that same quiet strength. When he finished his calls, Ethan excused himself to Lily and walked to the ICU reception desk, where he spoke with the head nurse. He explained Lily's situation, how she was alone, with no close family nearby, and asked for an exception so the little girl could see her mother, even if just briefly. The head nurse, a robust woman with kind eyes, listened intently. "Normally we don't allow children in the ICU," she began, "but given the circumstances..." She looked over at Lily, who was still coloring patiently. "I'll allow a short visit, 5 minutes, no more, and I need to prepare her for what she'll see. There are lots of tubes and machines, it can be scary." "Thank you," Ethan said sincerely. "I'll stay with her the whole time," the nurse nodded. "Come with me." Lily jumped up from her chair when Ethan called, dropping her crayons in her rush. He bent down to gather them, storing them carefully in his pocket. "Lily," he said, kneeling to her eye level, "we're going to see your mom now. But remember what I said, she's sleeping deeply, and there are machines helping her breathe. It might look a bit scary, but these machines are helping her get better. Lily nodded solemnly. Got it. The nurse led them down a long, quiet corridor, arriving at an area with large glass doors. Before entering, she handed Ethan and Lily disposable gowns, masks, and caps to wear. To protect the patients from germs, she explained, helping Lily adjust her mask properly. The ICU was entirely different from the rest of the hospital. The silence was broken only by the constant beeping of monitors and the mechanical sound of ventilators. Soft lighting illuminated the area, creating an almost otherworldly atmosphere. Patients lay in beds divided by curtains, each connected to tubes and machines. The nurse guided them to the bed where Hannah was. Ethan felt Lily squeeze his hand more tightly when she saw her mother for the first time. Hannah was pale, almost the color of the bed linens. A tube came from her mouth, attached to a ventilator that rose and fell at a steady rhythm. Monitors displayed her vital signs in colored lines. Part of her hair had been shaved for the surgery, and a dressing covered a portion of her head. Lily stood still for a moment, just observing. Ethan didn't know what to expect. Crying, screaming, maybe even fear. But Lily simply let go of his hand and approached the bed, stopping beside Hannah. "Hi, Mommy," she said quietly. "It's Lily. The doctor said you're sleeping so you can get better." Ethan felt a lump in his throat at the sound of Lily's small, calm voice speaking to her unconscious mother. "I'm okay," she continued. "There's a man named Ethan taking care of me. He bought me a cheese sandwich and a coloring book." Lily reached out and gently touched Hannah's fingers. "Don't worry about anything, okay? Just get better soon. Grandma Martha is on her way. I'm being brave, like you always taught me." The simplicity and purity of those words hit Ethan like a physical blow. Here was a 5-year-old facing what could be the worst crisis of her life, with a dignity many adults lacked. A dignity he, with all his money and power, had never shown. "I love you, Mommy," Lily finished, kissing her mother's fingers gently. The nurse, who had kept a respectful distance, approached again. "We need to go now," she said kindly. "But you can come back tomorrow for another short visit." Lily nodded, stepping away reluctantly. As they left the ICU, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the contrast between his life and Hannah and Lily's daily struggle. He had everything: money, power, influence, yet he felt empty. Hannah had nothing except her daughter, and yet she had raised a child capable of so much love and courage. Back in the waiting area, Ethan got a call from his lawyer. "Everything is set, Mr. Parker," came the voice on the other end. "The hospital has been informed. All costs for Ms. Whitmore's treatment will be covered, with no cap on expenses." "Thank you, Charles," Ethan replied. "There's something else I need you to do." He explained what he wanted: a dedicated financial trust for Hannah and Lily, a substantial sum that would ensure they never had to worry about money again. Lily's education, a home, a monthly stipend, everything necessary for security and comfort. "And Charles," he added before hanging up, "I want it done anonymously. Hannah must not know the money comes from me." After the call ended, Ethan observed Lily, who had resumed coloring her book. She chose bright colors, creating a vivid world on paper, a world where perhaps her mother was fine and happy. As he watched, Ethan reflected on his own life. He had built a financial empire, but at what cost? How many people like Hannah had he crushed along the way? How many Lilies had suffered because of his ruthless decisions? His success, which once filled him with pride, now felt hollow. It had been built on the ruins of his own humanity, and that of others he had harmed. He thought of all the times he'd ignored the human consequences of his actions. Mass layoffs when he acquired competing companies, the small businesses he had obliterated to increase profits, the lives he had impacted without a second thought. And for what? To live alone in a vacant mansion, to collect cars he rarely drove, to have bank accounts with more money than he could spend in several lifetimes. "Ethan," Lily's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Look what I drew." She proudly showed him a page where she had colored a garden full of flowers and butterflies. In the middle of the garden, 2 figures held hands, one large, one small. "That's Mommy and me," she explained. "In the garden of our dream house. Mommy always says that one day we'll have a house with a garden." Ethan felt something break inside him. Maybe his heart, or maybe the wall he had built around it over the years. "That's a beautiful drawing, Lily," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "I'm sure your mum will love it when she wakes up." Lily smiled, a smile full of the childlike hope that truly believes everything will be okay. It was a smile Ethan wanted to protect at all costs. Right then, sitting in an uncomfortable hospital chair beside a little girl he barely knew, Ethan Parker made a silent promise to himself. No matter what happened to Hannah, he would make sure Lily never again had to worry about her future. Even if they never knew it was him, even if he never got a thank you, he would do whatever was necessary to fix at least one of the many lives he'd harmed. And maybe, just maybe, by helping Hannah and Lily, he could begin to find his own lost humanity. The days at the hospital settled into a strangely comforting routine. In the mornings, Ethan arrived early, bringing Lily a small breakfast they bought together at the cafeteria. He had discovered that she liked pancakes with strawberry syrup and always made sure to order an extra portion of fruit, thinking how Hannah would probably care about her daughter's nutrition. After breakfast, they visited Hannah for a few minutes, another special exception the head nurse allowed after seeing how much the visits calmed the little girl. Lily spoke to her mother as though she could reply, telling her about the drawings she'd made, the birds she'd seen through the cafeteria window, and the stories Ethan told her. He always stood back a bit, giving Lily the space she needed for such an intimate ritual. In the afternoon, while Hannah continued her silent battle in the ICU, Ethan and Lily settled in the waiting room. He had turned a corner of it into his makeshift office, laptop open, phone always within reach, a stack of documents his assistant brought daily. His empire continued to function, but now from a distance and with drastically altered priorities. Next to him, Lily set up her own space with coloring books, puzzles, and the few toys Ethan had bought for her. Sometimes, she leaned over to see what he was doing, fascinated by the colorful charts on his computer screen. "What are those numbers?" she once asked, pointing to a complicated spreadsheet. "They're information about the companies I manage," Ethan explained simply. "You have lots of companies." Her eyes widened at the idea. "A few? Mommy says running a company must be really hard. That's why she always worked for other people." It was strange how his life had changed in less than a week. The powerful CEO who never went anywhere without his driver now parked his own car at the hospital. The man who charged hundreds of dollars per minute for consultations now spent hours telling stories to a 5-year-old. The ruthless executive who never wasted time on trivialities now knew exactly how Lily liked her hot chocolate, warm, with lots of mini marshmallows on top. The nurses soon became accustomed to their presence. Some brought small gifts for Lily, a hair ribbon, mint candies, a coloring magazine. Ethan noticed how the entire hospital seemed to have adopted the little girl, everyone aware of her delicate situation. "Are you her father?" asked a new nurse one day while checking Hannah's vital signs. "No," he answered quickly, feeling a bit uneasy about the question. "I'm a family friend." The nurse nodded, not pressing further, but Ethan noticed how the question had affected him. What kind of friend was he to Hannah? Certainly not the kind she would have chosen to look after her daughter if she had a choice. That morning, the 8th day since the accident, Lily was unusually quiet. She played absently with a plush unicorn Ethan had given her, but her gaze kept drifting toward the ICU doors. "Is everything okay?" Ethan asked, closing his laptop and giving her his full attention. Lily shrugged, a gesture he recognized as her way of saying something was bothering her, but she didn't know how to express it. "You know what I did when I felt sad as a child?" he tried, sitting on the floor next to her, ignoring how his suit would get wrinkled. Lily looked at him with genuine curiosity. It was probably hard for her to picture Ethan as a child, as if he'd been born an adult in a suit talking on a phone. "You were a child once," Ethan laughed, surprising even himself. It was the first time he'd genuinely laughed in days. The sound felt strange, almost foreign, in the somber hospital environment. "Believe it or not, I was, a long time ago. And when I was sad, my mum would tell me stories." "What kind of stories?" "Mostly adventure stories. About pirates and hidden treasure, knights and dragons." Lily's eyes lit up, like a cloudy sky letting through a sudden beam of sunlight. "Mommy tells stories too. She makes them all up. She doesn't need a book." "Really?" Ethan smiled, imagining Hannah creating magical worlds for her daughter after long days of working 2 jobs. "Which one is your favorite?" "The one about the girl on the moon," Lily replied promptly, her face brightening with the memory. "It's about a girl who lives on the moon and watches Earth, wanting to visit it. She becomes friends with a star that helps her come down here." "Sounds like a wonderful story." "It's the best," Lily affirmed, with the absolute conviction only a child can have. Then she added softly, as if sharing a precious secret, "Mommy says I'm like the moon girl, always dreaming of new places." Ethan felt a pang in his chest. In just a few days, he had learned more about unconditional love between a mother and a daughter than he had in his entire life of superficial, self-serving relationships. "Would you like me to tell you a story?" he offered, suddenly feeling inadequate for the task. Lily seemed to weigh the offer seriously, deciding whether Ethan could suitably take her mother's place in this important role. Her little eyes studied him with such intensity that he almost backed away. "Okay," she decided finally, settling on the waiting room rug. "But it has to be about a brave princess, not one who just waits to be saved." Ethan smiled. Of course, Hannah would have taught her daughter to value strong female protagonists. Even amid her own struggles, she was raising a girl who would never settle for the role of a damsel in distress. "Let's see what I can do," he thought for a moment, then began. "Once upon a time there was a princess named—" "Lily," the girl interrupted, her eyes shining for the first time that day. "Sure. Once upon a time there was a princess named Lily who lived in a kingdom far, far away." For almost an hour, Ethan improvised a story about a courageous princess who embarked on a quest to find a magical flower capable of curing any illness. Princess Lily confronted dragons who later became her friends, solved riddles left by ancient civilizations, and helped forest creatures, all to save her mother, the queen, who had mysteriously fallen ill. As he told the story, Ethan was surprised by his own creativity. He couldn't remember the last time he'd invented something solely for someone else's enjoyment. His presentations and financial spreadsheets were his adult version of storytelling, only far less magical and far more predictable. When he finished, with Princess Lily triumphantly returning to the castle with the healing flower, saving her mother and the entire kingdom, he realized the real Lily was watching him with a new look in her eyes, like she was seeing him for the first time. "You tell stories well," she said finally, a small smile on her lips. "Not as well as Mommy, but good enough." Coming from Lily, that was the highest compliment he could expect. Ethan felt a strange pride, so different from the satisfaction of closing a big deal or watching his stocks rise. "Thank you. Maybe we can continue the story tomorrow. See what other adventures Princess Lily will have." Lily nodded enthusiastically, but her smile soon faded, replaced by a shadow of concern. "What if Mommy wakes up tomorrow? Then she'll tell the stories again." The question was both hopeful and worried, as if Lily feared her mother's recovery might somehow disrupt this new ritual they'd created. "Then we'll have even more stories to tell," Ethan said gently. "You can never have too many stories, right? And I'm sure your moms are much better than mine." Lily seemed to ponder that, nodding slowly. "Yes, but your stories are good too. Maybe you two can tell them together when she wakes up." The idea of sitting with Hannah, inventing stories for Lily, seemed as impossible as it was comforting. Ethan couldn't imagine a scenario where Hannah would allow him to remain in their lives once she recovered. Why would she? He had been the villain of her real story. That afternoon, while Lily took a nap on the small waiting room couch, exhausted after a morning of storytelling and coloring, Ethan seized the chance to visit Hannah alone. There was something he needed to say, even if she couldn't hear him. The ICU was calm at that hour. The steady beeps of monitors created a monotonous, almost hypnotic melody. Hannah lay motionless, still on the ventilator, her skin pale against the white hospital sheets. Ethan pulled up a chair and sat beside her. Since the accident, he had been in that room many times, but always with Lily. He'd never been alone with Hannah. "Hi, Hannah," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure if you can hear me." "The doctors say maybe you can." He paused, looking at her serene face. Even in that state, as with part of her hair shaved and tubes in her mouth, she still had the dignity he remembered. Your daughter is amazing, you know. She's strong like you, smart too, and she has a huge heart." He swallowed hard. "You've done a wonderful job raising her, Hannah. Even with everything, all the hardships he had caused, the unspoken words weighed in the air like lead. I'm taking care of her while you recover. I know I'm not who you'd choose, but I promise I'm doing my best." Ethan looked at his own hands, hands that had signed the memo firing Hannah, hands that now helped her daughter color pictures and build block castles. "Lily told me about the Moon Girl story. She said it's her favorite." For a moment he was silent, listening to the machines. Then, without really planning, he started talking about the last few days. He told Hannah about Lily's drawings, the toy nurse uniform they'd bought at the hospital gift shop, how she loved watching birds outside the cafeteria window. As he spoke, something strange happened. The pressure reading on Hannah's monitor began fluctuating slightly, not drastically, but enough for Ethan to notice. "Hannah," he called, leaning forward. "Can you hear me?" The monitor kept registering small variations, as if something inside Hannah was responding. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe not. "I'll keep taking care of Lily until you get better," he promised. "And I'll make sure you both have everything you need afterward. I know I can't undo what I did, but I can at least try to do something right now." Just then, the ICU door opened, and Dr. Reynolds entered with 2 nurses. Their grim faces immediately told Ethan something was wrong. "Mr. Parker," the doctor said, his expression serious, "we need to perform some procedures on Ms. Whitmore. Could you give us a moment?" Something in the doctor's tone set off alarms in Ethan's mind. This wasn't just routine. "What happened?" Dr. Reynolds hesitated, glancing at the nurses already checking equipment and preparing supplies. "We've detected a possible post-surgical infection. The tests show a significant rise in inflammatory markers, and her temperature is going up. We're starting an aggressive antibiotic regimen, and we need to do some additional procedures." "Is it serious?" Ethan asked, though he already knew the answer. "In a patient in her condition, any complication is concerning," the doctor said frankly. "An infection can spread quickly and compromise multiple organs, but we're acting fast. It's the most we can do right now." Ethan nodded, feeling a huge weight on his shoulders. He glanced at Hannah one last time before leaving. The machines kept track of her heartbeat, fragile yet persistent. "We'll do everything we can," Dr. Reynolds assured. Returning to the waiting room, he found Lily still asleep. She hugged the plush unicorn, looking so small and vulnerable on the oversized couch. Her face was relaxed in slumber, worries briefly forgotten. Ethan sat in a nearby chair, watching her. What would happen if Hannah didn't survive? The question he'd been avoiding now loomed over him. Lily had mentioned a Grandma Martha who lived far away and had health problems, but aside from that, there seemed to be no one else, no other relatives, no close friends rushing to the hospital. The idea of Lily facing the world alone, tossed into the foster care system, was unbearable. Ethan knew the statistics. Older children rarely got adopted. Many bounced from one temporary home to another until they turned 18. No, he wouldn't let that happen. Right there, in that anonymous waiting room as the afternoon sun cast long shadows on the floor, Ethan Parker made a silent vow. Whether Hannah lived or died, Lily would not be left unprotected. He would use all his power, influence, and money to ensure she was safe and happy. It was the least he could do, a small attempt to atone for the harm he had caused. Lily shifted in her sleep, murmuring something that sounded like her mother's name. Instinctively, Ethan adjusted the blanket over her, a protective gesture that would have seemed odd to him just a week earlier. Out in the corridor, doctors and nurses dashed about. Something was happening in the ICU, maybe related to Hannah, maybe to another patient. Ethan wanted to get up, to ask what was happening, but he couldn't leave Lily alone. So he stayed, torn between his need to know about Hannah and his responsibility to her daughter. That's when he realized how much he had changed inside. Taking care of Lily was no longer just an obligation born of guilt. It had become something deeper, more meaningful. He genuinely cared about the child's well-being, Her feelings, her fears, her hopes, her dreams of brave princesses and friendly dragons. For the first time in many years, Ethan Parker was putting someone else's needs above his own. And strangely enough, it didn't feel like a sacrifice, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Lily's eyes opened slowly, blinking away sleep. "Ethan," she asked, her voice rasping. "What time is it?" "Almost 5, he answered gently. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, sitting up and rubbing her eyes with tiny fists. "I dreamed about Princess Lily. She was riding a friendly dragon through the sky. The dragon was purple with golden wings." Ethan smiled, imagining the vibrant and magical scene she described. "Sounds like a great dream." "Yeah," Lily agreed. "Mommy was there too. She was better and smiling a lot." For a moment, Ethan didn't know what to say. How to maintain a child's hope when doctors were racing to save her mother from a new complication. "You know something, Lily," he said finally. "I think Princess Lily in our story should have a friendly dragon next chapter. Don't you?" Her eyes lit up, temporarily forgetting her worries. "Yes, a purple dragon with golden wings. He can take the princess to visit the moon just like in Mummy's story." "Purple with golden wings it is," he agreed. "And together, they'll fly so high they can touch the stars." While Lily eagerly described the next adventure, Ethan made another silent promise. No matter what happened to Hannah, he would keep the magic of stories alive for Lily. He'd make sure she continued believing in brave princesses and friendly dragons, in happy endings and new beginnings. Because right then, amid made-up stories and silent promises, he had found something he thought he'd lost forever, his humanity. Rain fell gently against the windows of Charles Miller's office, Ethan's personal lawyer for over 15 years. The two men sat facing each other across a large antique mahogany desk, a stack of documents between them. "Are you sure about this, Ethan?" Charles asked, adjusting his reading glasses. "We're talking about a considerable amount of money." Ethan gazed out the window for a moment, watching the raindrops slide down the glass, forming tiny crystal rivers. From that floor, he could see much of the city. The same city where, somewhere, Hannah was fighting for her life while Lily waited for news, temporarily under the supervision of the hospital's social worker. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life, Charles," he finally replied, turning his attention back to the lawyer. "I want all the paperwork ready for signature today." Charles nodded, flipping through the papers in front of him. "Let's go over the details then," he said in a professional tone. "We're creating a trust fund valued at $5 million for Hannah Whitmore and her daughter, Lily Whitmore." "Correct. The fund will be managed by our firm, with you as the anonymous trustee. We've divided the resources into 3 main parts." Charles raised a finger. "First, the purchase of a residence in Hannah's name, fully paid, worth approximately $1 million, including taxes and a maintenance fund for the next 20 years. The house needs to be in a safe neighborhood," Ethan interrupted, "close to good schools, with a garden." Lily mentioned her mother always dreamed of having a house with a garden. Charles quickly jotted a note and continued. "Second, an educational fund exclusively for Lily, covering all expenses from elementary through postgraduate studies at any institution she chooses, domestic or international. We've also included provisions for tutoring, extracurricular courses, study abroad programs, and any other education-related expenses. And the amount will be adjusted annually for inflation," Ethan added. "I want to be sure that 15 years from now, when she's ready for college, the money is still sufficient, regardless of cost increases." "It's already in the contract," Charles assured. "Finally, the third part, a lifetime monthly stipend for Hannah, double what she earned working both her jobs combined. It will be deposited monthly into a special account, no strings attached, for as long as she lives." Ethan nodded, satisfied. He had spent days calculating and recalculating these figures, ensuring Hannah and Lily would be completely secure, no matter what. "And the matter of anonymity?" he asked. Charles picked another document from the stack. "As requested, the fund will be administered through a foundation created specifically for this purpose. Hannah will be informed she received an anonymous donation from a benefactor who wishes to remain unknown, Our firm will be the only point of contact, and I guarantee we'll keep your identity absolutely confidential." "Perfect. And the criteria for accessing the funds?" "Practically none," Charles replied, raising his eyebrows slightly. "That part is unusual, Ethan. Normally, trusts like this come with dozens of clauses and conditions. Are you sure you don't want to establish any requirements? No strings attached?" Ethan shook his head firmly. "None. Hannah has been through enough. I don't want her to have to prove she deserves this money or follow rules we set. She'll know better than anyone how to use it." Charles studied him for a moment, clearly intrigued by his client's atypical behavior. In 15 years working for Ethan Parker, he'd never seen him display such generosity without expecting something in return, especially not at this level of expense. "May I ask a personal question?" Charles ventured. "Go ahead." "Why are you doing this? I mean, $5 million is a lot, even for you. And from what I understand, this woman isn't even a close friend." Ethan was silent for a few seconds, considering how to answer. He hadn't told Charles about his past with Hannah, about how he'd unfairly fired her years ago, nor about the nights at the hospital caring for Lily while Hannah fought for her life. Some things were too personal, even for his trusted lawyer. "Let's just say I'm trying to balance the scales," he answered finally. "Some debts can't be paid with money, Charles, but it's the best I can offer right now." The lawyer nodded, not pressing further. He knew Ethan well enough to sense when to back off. "The documents will be ready for signature by the end of the day," he said, gathering the papers. "I'll prioritize this case personally." "Thank you." Ethan stood, adjusting his suit jacket. "And remember, Charles, no one can find out about this, no one. Absolute confidentiality, as always." Leaving the law office, Ethan felt a curious heaviness in his chest, not the guilt he had carried the last few weeks, but something else, something akin to peace or maybe hope. In the car on his way back to the hospital, he reflected on his decision. $5 million. For him, it represented little more than a few months' profit, but for Hannah and Lily, it meant a completely different life. A home of their own, no rent worries. Top-quality education for Lily, no limits. Financial security so Hannah could finally breathe. Maybe even pursue the dreams she'd abandoned when she became a single mother. All without them knowing it came from him. No public recognition, no gratitude, no chance at redemption in their eyes. Just the quiet certainty that, at least this once, he was doing the right thing. It was strange how that brought him comfort. Before the accident, before meeting Lily, Ethan would never have considered an anonymous donation. What was the point without public recognition? Without a picture in the paper? Without a thank you from the institution? But now, the idea of helping without being identified felt purer, more meaningful. At a red light, his phone rang. It was Charles. "I had an idea," the lawyer said without preamble. "What if we included a letter along with the trust notification? Something that explains to Hannah why she's getting this money, without revealing your identity." Ethan considered the suggestion for a moment. A letter, words that might try to explain the unexplainable, justify the unjustifiable. "No," he finally replied. "No letters, no explanations. Just the money and the freedom to use it as she sees fit." Because in the end, Ethan thought as the light turned green and he drove toward the hospital, words wouldn't fix what he had broken years ago. But maybe, just maybe, actions could plant the seeds of a better future for Hannah and Lily. A future in which, for the first time in his life, Ethan Parker would be part of the solution, not the destruction. Days at the hospital turned into weeks. Ethan now knew every nurse by name, every corner of the waiting room, and could predict when the coffee machine would break. Usually on Wednesdays around 3 in the afternoon. What began as a temporary stay had become a routine. He and Lily created their own little world within those white, antiseptic walls. The saga of Princess Lily and her dragon with golden wings now stretched over many chapters, becoming more elaborate each evening. Ethan surprised himself with his own imagination, inventing characters, magical lands, and adventures that made Lily's eyes shine, even on the hardest days. Occasionally, other patients or family members stopped to listen, forming a small, unlikely audience for his stories. Hannah's condition had stabilized after the infection. The doctors managed to control it with potent antibiotics, but she remained in a medically induced coma, her body needing time to recover from the double trauma of the brain hemorrhage and the subsequent complications. Dr. Reynolds explained that, in cases like hers, patience was essential. The brain followed its own healing schedule. That morning, the 27th day since the accident, Ethan arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. He had gone home to change clothes and pick up some new toys for Lily. As he walked down the now familiar corridor, he noticed unusual activity in the ICU area. Nurses were rushing in and out of Hannah's room, and Dr. Reynolds was there, which was rare at this hour. Ethan's heart pounded. After so many weeks of waiting, his body was conditioned to interpret any change as a threat. He quickened his pace, approaching the nurses' station. "What's going on?" he asked Nurse Jensen, who had become an ally in looking after Lily. Her face broke into a genuine smile, the first hopeful smile Ethan had seen in weeks. "She's waking up, Mr. Parker." Her neurological signs improved significantly overnight, and she started showing responses to stimuli. Dr. Reynolds is gradually reducing the sedatives, and she's coming out of the coma. Ethan felt his knees weaken. He held onto the desk, trying to process the news. "She's conscious, talking. Not fully conscious yet, but responding. It's a gradual process. It could take hours or even days for her to become fully alert and oriented." The nurse placed a gentle hand on his arm. "But this is a good sign, Mr. Parker. A very good sign." "Does Lily know yet?" "Not yet. The social worker took her to have breakfast in the cafeteria. We thought it best to inform her carefully. Waking from a prolonged coma can be confusing, sometimes scary for family members and especially children." Ethan nodded, understanding the caution. "Can I see her?" "Hannah, I mean." "Dr. Reynolds is finishing his evaluation. As soon as he's done, I don't see a problem. But be prepared, Mr. Parker. She'll still be on some equipment, and she might not recognize you immediately." The next hour was one of the longest of Ethan's life. He stayed in the waiting room, unable to focus on anything. His phone rang non-stop. Company matters that once seemed urgent now felt trivial compared to what was happening in that hospital. Finally, Dr. Reynolds appeared, looking tired but pleased. "Mr. Parker," he greeted with a nod, "I have good news. Ms. Whitmore is responding well to the decreased sedation. She's not fully lucid yet, but she opened her eyes a few times and seems to recognize verbal stimuli." That's wonderful," Ethan said, feeling an emotion he couldn't name. Relief? Joy? Or maybe fear of what came next? Any lasting effects? The doctor adjusted his glasses, choosing his words carefully. "It's too early for a complete evaluation. When patients awaken from prolonged comas, especially after cranial trauma, they can exhibit varying degrees of cognitive or motor impairment. Some recover all functions with time and rehabilitation. Others experience permanent deficits." Ethan thought of Lily, how she dreamed of the day her mum would come home. "But she'll get better, right? She'll be able to take care of her daughter again." "I'm cautiously optimistic," Dr. Reynolds replied. "Ms. Whitmore is young and was in excellent health before the accident. That's in her favor. And of course, the top-notch treatment she's received since the beginning makes a huge difference." Treatment Ethan had secured, using all his influence and resources to bring in the best specialists, the most advanced medications, the most attentive care. "May I see her now?" The doctor nodded. Briefly. Try not to overwhelm her with information or questions. A calm presence is ideal right now. Ethan walked slowly toward Hannah's room, feeling oddly nervous. For weeks, he had talked to her while she was unconscious, telling her about Lily, about the hospital, about small daily things. This was different. She might look at him, recognize him, remember. As he entered the room, the first thing he noticed was the change in atmosphere. It felt lighter, less oppressive. Some of the equipment was gone, including the ventilator. Hannah was breathing on her own now, with just a thin oxygen tube in her nose. He approached the bed carefully. Hannah had her eyes closed, but her face looked different, less like the motionless mask of the past few days, and more like someone in a natural sleep. Her hair, which had been partly shaved, was starting to grow back, forming short, dark curls against the white pillow. "Hannah," he called softly, not really expecting a response. To his surprise, her eyelids fluttered. Slowly, as if each movement took immense effort, Hannah opened her eyes. Not fully, but enough for Ethan to see the deep brown of her irises, unfocused and confused. "Hi," he said, uncertain of what else to say. It's good to see you awake." Her eyes roamed around the room for a moment, as if they didn't register where she was or who was speaking. Then, gradually, her gaze settled on Ethan's face. He saw the exact instant recognition dawned, a slight widening of her eyes, a subtle tension in her dry lips. Then... Her voice was only a raspy whisper, almost inaudible, the result of weeks with a tube in her throat. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. She recognized him. After everything she'd been through, she still remembered him, not as the man who'd been caring for her daughter, but as the arrogant executive who had fired her years ago. "Yes, it's me," he confirmed softly. A frown creased Hannah's brow in confusion. Her lips moved, trying to form words, but only weak sounds emerged. A nurse had left a cup of water with a straw on the bedside table. Ethan picked it up and carefully offered it to Hannah, who took a few small sips. Lie?" she finally asked, her voice still frail but full of concern. "She's fine," Ethan quickly reassured her. "She's having breakfast in the cafeteria. She's been here every day waiting for you to wake up." Hannah closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the information. When she opened them again, they looked clearer. "Why, you?" The question held so many layers, so many unspoken questions. "Why are you here? Why are you involved? Why, of all people in the world, are you the one in my hospital room?" Before Ethan could formulate an answer, the door opened. Lily ran in, followed by the social worker who tried, unsuccessfully, to slow her down. "Mommy!" The joyful shout filled the room. "You woke up!" Hannah's face changed completely at the sight of her daughter. The confusion and tension gave way to an expression of pure love, so powerful that Ethan felt a lump in his throat. With visible effort, she raised an arm, inviting Lily into a hug. "My treasure," she whispered. Lily rushed to the bed, hugging her mother carefully, as if she instinctively knew to be gentle. Hannah held her, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. Ethan stepped back, suddenly feeling like an intruder in this intimate moment. But then Lily turned to him, her face radiant. "Ethan, look, Mommy woke up, like the queen in our story." Hannah looked from Lily to Ethan, the confusion returning. "Our story?" "Yes. Ethan tells me stories every night while we wait for you to wake up, about Princess Lily and her dragon with golden wings, and how she saved the queen." Hannah's eyes were now fixed on Ethan, full of questions. "Ethan took care of me, Mommy," Lily went on, oblivious to the tension. "He got me a unicorn and books, and takes me to see the birds by the cafeteria window. And he visits you every day too. Mr. Parker?" the social worker interjected, noticing the confusion on Hannah's face. "Perhaps we should come back later, after Ms. Whitmore has rested." "No," Hannah said, her voice firmer now. "I want to talk to him, just the two of us." The social worker looked from Ethan to Hannah, assessing the situation. "Are you sure, Miss Whitmore? You just woke up. You shouldn't push yourself." "I'm sure," Hannah replied. Then, turning to Lily with a faint smile, "Sweetie, Mommy needs to chat a bit with Ethan. Can you wait outside with Ms. Torres? I promise it'll be quick." Lily hesitated, not wanting to leave her mom's side so soon. "Promise you won't go back to sleep?" "I promise," Hannah whispered, caressing her daughter's face. "Go with Ms. Torres now. She can buy you a juice, okay?" Once Lily and the social worker left, a heavy silence filled the room. Ethan remained standing, uncertain, while Hannah watched him with an unreadable expression. "How long?" she finally asked. 27 days since the accident." Hannah closed her eyes, processing the information. My daughter was alone for almost a month. No, Ethan rushed to clarify. Your mother arrived as soon as she found out, but she couldn't stay. Health problems of her own. The hospital's social worker helped a lot, but he faltered, unsure how to explain his role. But it was you who stayed with her, Hannah finished, studying him intently. Why? It was the question Ethan had both expected and dreaded. How did he explain something he barely understood himself? How did he put into words the transformation that had happened within him since he first saw Lily in that emergency room? I was at the hospital the day of your accident, he began. I saw Lily all alone in despair. When I found out she was your daughter, I felt responsible. Responsible? Hannah repeated, a flicker of indignation giving life to her weak voice. I don't recall you feeling responsible when you fired me without just cause, destroying my career. Ethan lowered his head, taking the rebuke. There was no defense for what he had done. You're right, he admitted. What I did to you was unforgivable. I didn't expect forgiveness then, and I don't now. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But when I saw Lily, when I realized how badly she needed help, I couldn't just walk away. Hannah watched him for a long moment, her face reflecting an inner conflict. The doctor said I received top-of-the-line treatment, she noted. Specialists, experimental medications, procedures my basic coverage would never cover. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That was you, wasn't it? Ethan nodded. I paid for your treatment, yes, but not to redeem myself or buy your forgiveness. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Hannah looked away, fixing her gaze on the window where timid sunlight streamed in. Do you know what happened after you fired me? She asked, her voice steadier now. No one in the financial sector would hire me. Your name was too powerful, your influence too great. I had to start from scratch with a baby to raise. Every word was a razor to Ethan's conscience. He could only imagine what she'd endured. Sleepless nights, piling bills, constant fear of the future. I know nothing can undo what happened, he said. But I did something else besides paying for your treatment. Hannah looked at him, waiting. I created a financial trust for you and Lily. It's anonymous, managed by a law firm. It includes a fully paid house, guaranteed education for Lily from now through college, and a lifetime monthly income so you'll never have to worry about money again. Hannah's eyes widened in shock. What? Why, how? You'll be contacted by the firm once you're discharged, Ethan continued. They'll explain all the details. The money is yours, no strings attached. Use it however you see fit. I can't accept that, Hannah said, shaking her head weakly. It's too much. Feels like a bribe. It's not a bribe, Ethan insisted gently. And you don't have to decide now, just know that it's there, available whenever you need it. Hannah closed her eyes again, looking exhausted from the conversation. When she opened them, there was a new determination in her gaze. I don't know what to say, Ethan. Part of me wants to refuse anything that comes from you. Another part thinks about Lily, about the opportunities it would give her. She took a deep breath. I need time to process all of this. Of course, he agreed immediately. Take all the time you need. A lighter silence settled between them. Through the window, they could hear birds singing. A small reminder that the world outside went on, oblivious to the drama unfolding in that hospital room. Lily seems to like you a lot, Hannah commented, a mild tone of surprise in her voice. Ethan smiled softly. She's amazing. Smart, brave, imaginative. You've done a wonderful job raising her. A faint ghost of a smile appeared on Hannah's lips. She's my whole life. I know this doesn't erase what I did, Ethan said after a moment, his voice raw with sincerity. But I hope it gives you a fresh start. A life without the hardships I caused. Hannah studied him quietly, as if trying to see past the surface and find the truth in his words. I'll call Lily back, she said finally. She must be anxious. Ethan understood the conversation was over and nodded, standing up. I'll go get her. When he returned with Lily, the girl ran straight into her mother's arms, full of stories to tell, questions to ask, love to give. Ethan lingered near the door, sensing his time there had come to an end. I have to go now, he announced softly. Lily turned, surprised. But you'll come back, right? To finish the dragon story, Ethan looked at Hannah, whose expression was neutral. That depends on your mother, Lily. You can visit if you want, Hannah said, surprising him. She'll obviously miss you. It was more than he expected or deserved. Thank you, he replied. Truly grateful. Lily hopped off the bed and hugged his legs. Bye, Ethan. You're my friend, you know. Ethan bent down, returning the hug carefully. You're my friend too, Lily, one of the best I've ever had. When he straightened, he noticed Hannah watching him with a complex expression, not exactly forgiveness or acceptance, but something close to understanding. Thank you, she said simply, for taking care of her. For us everything. Ethan nodded, respecting the dignity with which she handled the situation. Even in vulnerability, after all she'd been through, Hannah possessed an inner strength he could only admire. As he left the hospital that afternoon, Ethan walked to his car with a lighter step. The crushing weight of guilt was still there, but it felt less suffocating. In the distance, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded him of the dragon's colors in the stories he told Lily. My friend, she had called him, with the sincerity only children possess. Friend. A simple word containing a world of possibilities Ethan had never considered for himself. Turning the ignition, he felt a strange sense of hope blossom inside him. Maybe, just maybe, there was still time to become the kind of person worthy of that title, the kind of person Lily saw in him. For the first time in a long while, perhaps for the first time in his adult life, Ethan Parker felt he could be someone better, someone worthy of a child's trust. Someone capable not only of building fortunes, but of fixing what he had broken along the way. And to his surprise, that possibility felt more valuable than any deal he had ever closed. The house was exactly what Lily had dreamed of. 2 stories of light brick, large windows letting in abundant natural light, and most importantly, a garden. Not just any garden, but a generous expanse of grass, ready for colorful flowers, and a small apple tree near the back, which, according to the realtor, would produce sweet fruit in the fall. Is it really ours, Mom? Really? Lily asked, eyes wide as she ran across the freshly cut lawn, her brown curls bouncing with each step. Hannah watched her daughter from the porch, still leaning slightly on the cane the doctors insisted she use during her recovery. 3 months after waking from the coma, she still faced some challenges, occasional headaches, slight balance issues, and momentary memory lapses. But the doctors were optimistic. With time and proper therapy, they believed she would regain nearly all her functions. Yes, honey, it's really ours, Hannah replied, feeling the spring sun warm her face. No one can take it from us. Safety. It was a feeling Hannah had forgotten. After years of struggling to keep up with rent, dreading every increase and every unexpected bill, every illness that might force her off work, she now had this, a home of her own, bills paid, and the certainty that Lily would have all the opportunities she deserved. The law firm had explained the details of the trust fund a week after her hospital discharge. Initially, she nearly refused. It seemed unreal, excessive, almost suspicious. But then she thought of Lily and everything she could now offer her daughter and realized her pride could not stand in the way of that. The attorney upheld the donor's anonymity, but Hannah knew. Even if Ethan had never confirmed it during that hospital conversation, she was aware of the extent of his fortune and influence. No one else had the resources to create a trust of that magnitude. No one else had the motive. Mom, can I have a swing on that tree? Lily called out, pointing to the apple tree. Sure, sweetie, Hannah replied, smiling. We'll plan our garden just the way we want it. A week later, the garden began taking shape. With the help of a local landscaper, Hannah and Lily planted a variety of flowers, daisies, sunflowers, lilies, creating a rainbow of colors visible from the street. A wooden swing was installed on the apple tree, and a small vegetable patch was fenced off in a sunny corner. We'll plant strawberries, tomatoes, and carrots, Lily explained to the landscaper, with the seriousness of a budding farmer. Mom says homegrown food tastes better. As she watched Lily give instructions on where each plant should go, Hannah felt a swirling mix of emotions. Gratitude, of course, relief as well. But there was something more complicated stirring inside her, something that felt like forgiveness. She hadn't forgotten what Ethan had done all those years ago. The public humiliation, the closed doors in the financial sector, the nights she cried while trying to scrape by. Those memories still existed, still hurt when touched. But alongside them now were other memories. Ethan sitting on the hospital floor, telling Lily elaborate stories. Ethan making sure Hannah received the best medical treatment possible. Ethan quietly creating a safety net so that mother and daughter could finally thrive. Could people change after all? Hannah wasn't sure, but she wanted to believe they could. Thursday morning in the penthouse office of the Parker building, Ethan gazed at the city through his window. The skyline looked different, or perhaps it was his eyes that now saw things differently. Since returning to work after the events at the hospital, his employees had noticed the change. The feared CEO, infamous for his temper and ruthless decisions, seemed to have been replaced by someone more human. The first board meeting after his return left everyone stunned. Instead of demanding staff cuts to increase quarterly profits, Ethan announced a comprehensive benefits program for employees, including extended parental leave, childcare support, and flexible schedules for parents. We can't expect excellence from people who are constantly worried about their family's well-being, he explained to the astonished executives. I want our employees to know we value not just their work, but their lives. There was resistance, of course. The old guard on the board complained about costs, dangerous precedents, return on investment. Ethan listened patiently, another shock for those used to his abrupt interruptions, and then simply said, if I show you that these changes will increase our productivity and talent retention in the long run, would you support them? When they hesitantly agreed, Ethan smiled. Great. Because I spent the last 2 weeks studying companies that implemented similar policies, and the numbers speak for themselves. He then presented a meticulous report demonstrating how companies with humane policies not only maintained happier employees, but also more productive and loyal ones, which meant lower turnover, lower training costs, and yes, higher long-term profits. I'm not asking you to abandon the profit motive, Ethan concluded. I'm showing you there's a better path to achieve it. Gradually, the company culture began to change. Cutthroat competition gave way to collaboration. Fear was replaced by respect. People started talking about Parker Enterprises not just as a profitable investment, but as a good place to work. On his desk, Ethan kept a small memento from his days at the hospital, a drawing made by Lily depicting what she called her hospital family, herself, Hannah in a hospital bed, and Ethan beside them, all holding hands under a smiling sun. It was a constant reminder of what was at stake, of the human cost behind every corporate decision. A few months after implementing the new policies, Jane Torres, an employee in the accounting department, asked to speak with him. Ethan remembered her vaguely, a middle-aged woman who'd worked there for over a decade, always discreet, always competent. Mr. Parker, she said, visibly nervous, I just wanted to thank you personally for the new flexible schedule policy. My son has special needs, and being able to adjust my hours for his therapies, well, it changed our lives. Ethan realized that before, he never would have known her story. He never would have understood the real impact of his decisions on the lives of his employees, real people with real families and real challenges. Don't thank me, Jane, he responded genuinely. It's the least we can do, and if you need any other accommodations, my door is always open. At home, the changes were even more profound. Ethan sold the isolated mansion he once occupied. It was too big, too cold for just one person, and bought a more modest but cozy apartment near a park. He began leaving the office on time, discovering that the world kept turning even without his constant supervision. He discovered local restaurants, neighborhood bookstores, the simple pleasure of walking among ordinary people without the artificial barrier of status. On Sunday mornings, he became a regular at a family-owned cafe where, to his surprise, he made friends, not strategic connections or useful contacts, but people who genuinely enjoyed his company. The Ethan Parker who once measured his worth by his bank balance and by the fear he inspired was slowly disappearing. In his place grew a man who found satisfaction in small moments, real connections, and making a difference in others' lives. Years passed. Lily turned 7, then 10, then 13. Hannah fully recovered from her injuries and, over time, found a new purpose. Using part of the trust as initial capital, she opened a small children's bookstore in the city center, where she held weekly story time sessions. The Moon Girl tales, once told only to Lily, now enchanted dozens of children. Ethan followed all this from a distance, through local newspaper clippings and occasional bits of news that reached him by chance. He never directly interfered in their lives, respecting the space Hannah clearly wanted. But he also never stopped caring or wondering how they were. One autumn day, 5 years after the accident, Ethan was browsing the local paper while having coffee in his favorite bakery when a small article caught his attention. "Enchanted Moon Bookstore celebrates anniversary with charity event," read the headline. The photo showed Hannah and Lily, now 10 years old, smiling in front of a charming corner shop. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Lily had grown so much. Her curls were longer now, her face losing its baby features. And Hannah, she looked radiant, healthy, happy. Exactly what he had hoped for when he created the trust. He read the story eagerly, discovering that Hannah's bookstore had become a significant cultural hub for children in the community. Besides books, it offered creative writing workshops, reading clubs, and a special program for low-income families who could receive books for free. "I went through difficult times when my daughter was little," Hannah was quoted as saying. "I know what it's like to want the best for your child and not be able to afford it. Now that I have the opportunity, I want to give back." Ethan carefully folded the newspaper, tucking it into his briefcase. That night, he made a substantial anonymous donation to the bookstore's free book program, not because he needed more atonement, but because he genuinely believed in Hannah's mission. The years kept passing. By the time Lily turned 15, Enchanted Moon Bookstore had expanded to 3 locations around the city. Hannah had become a respected figure in children's literature circles, publishing a collection of short stories that included the ones she'd originally invented for Lily. Ethan, for his part, had turned Parker Enterprises into a model of corporate responsibility. In addition to maintaining employee-friendly policies, he set up a foundation that funded educational projects in underserved communities. A business magazine that once labeled him the most ruthless shark on Wall Street now called him the human face of modern capitalism. On his 50th birthday, during an interview for a prominent business publication, the reporter asked what moment he considered the turning point in his life. "There was a moment," Ethan replied after some thought, "when I realized I was building an empire on ruins of relationships, trust, and humanity, and I realized no amount of success was worth that price." Intrigued, the journalist pressed for more details, but Ethan just smiled and changed the subject. Some stories were too personal to share, some transformations too intimate to expose. From time to time, Ethan drove by the neighborhood where he knew Hannah and Lily lived. He never stopped, never intruded. He would only glance from a distance at the house with the blooming garden and the swing in the apple tree, imagining the lives flourishing inside. Sometimes, in his quiet moments, he allowed himself to wonder what it would have been like if he had stayed in their lives. Would he be a friend to Lily? A confidant to Hannah? Something more? But he always pushed those thoughts away. The important thing wasn't what he might have gained, but what they had achieved: safety, happiness, fulfillment. It was on a rainy May afternoon, just before Lily's 18th birthday, that the unexpected happened. Ethan was leaving a meeting when his secretary intercepted him in the hallway. "Mr. Parker, there's a young woman at reception asking for you." "I have another meeting in 20 minutes, he replied, checking his watch. "Who is she?" "She said her name is Lily." "Lily Whitmore." Time seemed to freeze. Ethan felt his heart race. "Please, cancel all my appointments for the rest of the day and bring her to my office immediately." Minutes later, he stood face to face with Lily. She was no longer the 5-year-old clutching coins for medicine, but a confident young woman on the verge of adulthood. Her brown curls were pinned in a loose bun, and her eyes, the same expressive ones he remembered, regarded him with a mix of curiosity and determination. "Hi, Ethan," she said, her voice carrying echoes of the child he once knew, but also the maturity of someone nearly 18. "I'm not sure if you still remember me." "Of course I remember," he answered, his voice suddenly hoarse with emotion. "How could I forget? But what brings you here? Does your mother know you've come?" Lily smiled, a smile so reminiscent of Hannah's that Ethan felt a pang in his chest. "She does. Actually, she helped me find you." Lily pulled an envelope from her purse. "I'm here to give you this in person." With slightly trembling hands, Ethan took the envelope. Inside was an elegant invitation to Lily's graduation party. On the back, a short handwritten note. "Ethan, it would be an honor to have you at this important moment. The past is the past. Maybe it's time for a new beginning. Hannah." Ethan had to struggle to hold back the emotion threatening to spill over. After all these years, Hannah was reaching out, offering not just forgiveness, but the possibility of a new chapter. "I'm going to Yale in the fall," Lily explained, filling the silence. "Pre-med. I want to be a neurosurgeon like Dr. Reynolds, who took care of my mum." Ethan nodded, still processing everything. "That's an incredible path. I'm sure you'll be extraordinary." "Mum told me everything," Lily went on, "about how you helped us, the trust, the house, my education, and about, before that, how you were her boss, how you fired her." She paused, meeting his eyes. "But she also told me how you took care of me at the hospital, how you told me stories to distract me, how you paid for her treatment without wanting any recognition." "Your mom is very generous in remembering the good parts," Ethan responded humbly. "It's not generosity, it's the truth." Lily smiled again. "You know what else she said? That you were living proof people can change, that they can become better than they once were. That was probably the most important lesson I grew up with." Something warm and bright expanded in Ethan's chest, a feeling he recognized, after a moment, as hope. Not the timid hope he'd harbored all these years that Hannah might someday forgive him, but a broader, deeper hope, that the scars of the past really could heal, that new beginnings were possible even after grave mistakes. "Please tell your mother I'll be at your graduation," he answered, only half successful in masking his emotion. "It would be an honor." Lily stood up to leave, but before she did something that caught Ethan completely off guard. She stepped forward and briefly hugged him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." After she left, Ethan remained still for a long time, holding the invitation against his chest. Outside his office window, the sun was beginning to set, bathing the sky in golden tones reminiscent of the dragon wings from the stories he once told Lily. Deep in his heart, he knew he had done the right thing, not for forgiveness or gratitude, not to soothe his conscience, but simply because it was right. And now, beyond all expectations, that gesture had opened a door he never dreamed of stepping through, the chance to be part of Hannah and Lily's lives, even if only in the periphery. As he carefully placed the invitation in his briefcase, Ethan Parker, the man who once built an empire at the cost of his own humanity, allowed himself a moment of pure joy. Perhaps, just perhaps, his story's final chapter had yet to be written. Perhaps there was room for redemption, for connection, for a new beginning. And for the first time in many years, he felt he deserved that chance. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.